Been saying my Penn State fans only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I think about that.
Are you find your agenda?
Gather it back.
So like, if you hadn't worked out for a while and you decided to do a massive.
Mike's on.
You're welcome. Good evening, welcome to January 9th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. This is a zoning amendment night, so the first item on the agenda is discussion on the amendment number 1, which is the proposed zoning amendment for solar arrays. I hope I don't have to read this whole article. We did get it, we got an email from the Conservation Commission basically saying, if I can find it quick enough here.
Please don't.
Pardon me?
They're basically saying,
Well, they're opposed by unanimous vote for reasons that we printed funky.
I know.
Commission is not in favor of waiving the wetland buffer without the ability to request wildlife and wetland assessments. We also are concerned with the lack of protection for prime agricultural soils and steep slopes. So they're requesting we can rescind the proposed article and try to develop a more robust article next year.
There was also mention of not having communicated with them
Yeah,
in that email.
that isn't about this though. That's about communication between boards. That's not about this article.
Well, I think they would have preferred an opportunity to provide some better feedback on this amendment, proposed amendment.
Can I ask that you guys speak up a little bit more? We can't hear you very well.
I'm sorry, I will try.
Thank you.
So anyway, the Conservation Commission basically said 3 things, which I read a bit ago. I'll repeat them. Hopefully people hear me this time. They voted unanimously against the Article 38 because they didn't want to waive the wetland buffer without the ability for wildlife and wetlands assessment and some other things. We also are concerned about the lack of protection for prime agricultural soils and steep slopes. They're requesting the planning board rescind the proposed article and try to develop another one in 2026. In response to that, Mr. Fillmore, who I believe at least co-authored this article, or amendment, I should say, proposed amendment. I believe everybody has a copy, all the board members at least have a copy of this 3-page thing from Bruce. The last page has a couple additions to the proposed amendment that he would like to add in here. The first is to insert in 38.4 shall be larger than 10 kilowatts and larger than smaller than 5 million kilowatts.
Could you repeat that?
To change 38.4, right now it reads the photovoltaic array shall be less than 5 million watt capacity. Change that to shall be larger than 10 kilowatts and less than 5 million watt capacity. And 38.6, which is what what the Conservation Commission was talking about, change it to say wetland crossings for said power lines and access roads shall be exempt from the town of Ware zoning, Article 28. All buffer and structure setbacks in Article 28 are to remain in force for the actual solar array structures and supporting equipment. I say take out the word actual because it's unnecessary, but anyway. And the third change was Article 38.7. Says shall in the second line. Change that to may. In 38.9, the same thing. It says if the owner shall, change that to may. Huh?
Yeah, and then add the others.
Oh, as required by the planning board.
If I can explain that a little bit,
Yes.
those changes are from addressing Conservation Commission concerns. And I got an email from the chairman of our Energy Committee, David Erickson. And he got some input from Clean Energy New Hampshire and someone else. And that, it seemed like that was some concerns they had about other smaller scale projects, about the decommissioning requirements. And also, this doesn't have a lower limit, it's just set up to 5 million. But there's two different, essentially, there's a breaking point between under 10 kilowatts and over 10 kilowatts, as far as the system sizes go. Once you hit the 10 kilowatt level, above 10 kilowatt, the permitting process changes dramatically. It gets a lot more involved. Under 10 kilowatts is the systems you see on people's roofs, essentially, and on a single pole in somebody's yard. They're systems designed mainly to power that structure, not to sell the power wholesale or retail, or really to sell the power. It's for powering somebody's house or small business. And that's not the type of system that we're looking to regulate. Those are, but once you get over the 10 kilowatt, the whole permitting process with the electric company, the state, everything changes. So that's what this ordinance is attempting to, right now, those types of systems aren't allowed in town at all. So that's what this ordinance is attempting to do, is allow those types of systems, privately owned systems, that are between 10 kilowatts and 5 million. And the reason why 5 million is a cap is because when it comes to grants and all that, that's the biggest system you can put in New Hampshire.
Why are you saying may be bonded instead of shall?
Because if someone does an 11 kilowatt system and they just get over that 10 kilowatt threshold,
We can still waive it.
and that's why I went from shall to may, essentially.
We can still waive it, though.
Well, it's a
No, we couldn't.
Zoning
We
ordinance.
couldn't waive it.
zoning ordinance, right? Can't waive
Right,
it.
can't waive it.
And that may, at the end of the sentence, includes as required by planning board?
Right.
Right, gotcha.
Right, that's why I inserted that in there, so the planning board has the final say on whether or not they have to do it. And the part about the wetland buffer was intended for the power lines and the access roads only. Anyway, that's what it was intended for. After reading the proposal, the proposed ordinance again, I realized there was a section underneath where it said the roads and power lines. It seemed like you could apply it to the whole array. That's why I clarified that section 38.6, so that it's clear that the array is not exempt from those special exception buffer requirements and the building setbacks. Power lines are already exempt from wetlands crossings anyway. Town roads are exempt from special exceptions for wetlands crossings. So it's not something that isn't allowed in other parts of the ordinance already. The reason I didn't address the prime farmland concern the wetlands the Conservation Commission had was RSA 672:1, 3A, which I included in that correspondence. Says the installation of solar, wind, and other renewable energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of renewable energy shall not be unreasonably limited by use of municipal zoning powers or by the unreasonable interpretation of such powers except where necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare. Protecting prime farmlands is not public health, safety, or welfare.
If you look at that RSA, the very next one then talks about why farmland should be protected though.
Yeah, we haven't, there's not a lot of prime farmland left in Ware that's not already protected. Woods are not prime farmland. So that there's not a lot that could be gained by,
But it's not
Right.
zero.
it's not zero, but it's a pretty small amount. And let's face it, there's not a lot of prime farming going on anyway. Hay crops.
I have a question. Would this have made it possible, had it already been in place the way it's written, for Revision to have come and put their array and had the farmer who wanted to farm that property at the same time? Would this have made that possible?
They could still do it. Yeah, they could do that, but they would still need, we've got some buffer requirements in here now
Gotcha.
that weren't there. So they would have to do, they would have to screen it somehow from the abutters in the road, which there was no requirement for that before. Actually, that's why we decided it wasn't allowed. That's why the planning board decided it wasn't allowed in our zoning, ZBA decided it wasn't allowed in our zoning. That's why they were denied all.
Oh, I thought
yeah.
it was because it was a commercial operation in a rural ag.
Right, that, which is not allowed in our zoning.
Right.
Right. This article would allow that.
Okay.
So this might have been discussed before, but I'm ignorant. What is the overall intended value to the town of Ware?
Well, a lot of that land right now that, where these would go is in current use. These are taxable improvements. They're not exempt from taxes like residential solar arrays are. So the tax value on these, I mean, they're $1 million installations they're building here. And there's zero services required from the town. There's no kids there, there's no houses there, there's no, they fence them off to keep people out. So it's a potential tax revenue generator.
And do we know, so on a 5 million watt capacity, how many acres is that?
20 to, all depends on how compact they can make it, 20 to 30. So they gotta take it out of current use, and they're gonna pay taxes on the infrastructure, on the improvements. So it's a substantial amount of money. And for 40 years is what they usually put these things in for.
Well, I just some rough math that I did on a 5 million watt capacity. Most of the stuff that I found online, I used the most efficient, which was in the Utah desert, was 29%, was the most efficiency that they could get out of it, right? Which that brings 5 million down to, and my math isn't great, 1,450,000 watts. We get about 199 days of sunshine here in Ware,
Oh, I know, yeah.
right? Which brings it down to 797,500.
Yep.
The average home requires 29,000 watt hours, which means a 5 million watt array would be able to power about 28 homes at max efficiency. And some organization is gonna come and pay taxes on that when they can sell back.
They do.
Seems a bit bizarre. to
They
me.
don't sell it back to public service. They become a power generator themselves, and they sell it to homeowners.
People who can't put solar on their houses.
Right, so they're not selling it for the lowest commercial rate that public service is paying for it, which is 6 cents a kilowatt or something. They're selling it for substantially more than that.
Doesn't seem like a good investment to me. But
I'm not gonna invest in it.
Yeah, then you get public service or Eversource, whoever, they're gonna charge you a transmission fee anyway, because it's their lines they're gonna connect into.
Right.
So,
But they become a power generator themselves and sell the power to the end consumer.
So, except that RSA 362A 1A, if you are in this 5 megawatt range, you either have to be a municipal host and sell to a political subdivision as your only customer, or you have to be a limited producer, in which case, one of the stipulations is you are not registered as a generator.
Yeah, but they sell them to, and maybe they're not registered as a generator, but I mean,
And I guess let me, because we're kind of still starting off. I am in favor of this idea, but I am opposed to this current iteration of it. And so I have quite a few pages of having gone through the RSAs, having gone through the Charlestown one that Dana Jean shared with us a couple months ago. I think that this would benefit the town with a year of review, with the input of the Energy Committee. I am happy to go through every single thing that I think should be added, and we can stay here all night and continue to discuss it, but that's where I stand right now. I suppose I will continue to go through it, but that's the first one, was why the 5 megawatts, because I know you've mentioned grants a couple of times, but New Hampshire limits grants to 500 kilowatts, not 5 megawatts, and it's up to $10,000, so I don't
well,
believe.
that's for small residential ones.
Nope.
These big ones, they get big grants.
No, that was the commercial and industrial grant from the state of New Hampshire. No, when the 5 megawatt comes in, that's when you turn into that RSA 362A 1A, where again, you have to be a municipal host or a limited producer. So, I mean, I can keep going, but
Well, look, for the purpose of discussion, I'll make a motion that we delay this for a year.
I was second that.
can I ask one more question before the vote?
Discussion, yes, you may.
Could this be solved temporarily by modifying acceptable use in rural ag, industrial, or whatever, to add the definition of the solar array, so that if somebody wanted to do a 5 megawatt, gigawatt, whatever it is, array, they could come to the planning board and it would give us the ability to review them on a case-by-case basis? Because now, this type of structure is not allowed on rural agricultural, it's probably not in industrial and in.
It's not allowed anywhere in town
Yeah,
presently.
exactly. So if we added it and said it is allowed, then it would allow some company that wanted it to come to the planning board, and it would give us the ability to review it on a case-by-case basis.
So
It's compelling.
that suggests to me that you're making up the rules as you play the game.
Well, they would still have to come in for a site plan.
Correct,
It'd
but
have
if
to
we
be
don't
done.
have this document, the Article 38, that defines what we're doing, what we're expecting, then there's no reason to have a definition when it's prohibited.
Well, we have things, documents that specify, like driveways and, you know, maybe there are amendments, I don't know what the correct term is, that we could turn this into like an amendment to that that says, if you want to do this, here's the rules of engagement. Like driveways and stone walls, or dual driveways, or
Correct, but that
whatever.
still comes down to, it would need to be an article that the community would vote on.
And I guess to push back a little bit, some of the things that I would like to make sure are clarified in a future version of this have to do with, like, decommissioning. And so if we were to approve one in the next year and find out like, that really was done completely the wrong way, then we are committed for 40 years, potentially 40 years. So,
4 years?
I said 40.
40,
Oh, that, you know what this is?
yeah.
Yeah.
40, yeah. Wait, we get decommissioning in there, yeah.
That's what the current one
Right,
says.
no, but again, I'm talking about the details. For instance, the decommissioning plans I could find online usually go with 3 feet or 4 feet when on agricultural land, as well as removal and restoration of access road locations. Many also specifically call out that cables below that depth can only be left if they do not contain material deemed harmful to the environment. That's 38.7. I mean, so I guess, starting at the top, like 38.3, no criteria for approval within each zone. RA seems like it should be more restrictive than commercial or industrial with at least setbacks and visual buffers. 38.5, we should define who is responsible for softening the view. Is that the landowner or the array owner? I think we need a better definition of what a visual buffer is. What are the consequences for not complying? 38.6, remove exemption language or modify it or require certification of a wetlands engineer or similar. We have gone through one possible iteration of that. 38.7, I read that one already, about the decommissioning plans, 3 to 4 feet, leaving cable. 38.9 doesn't define what performance is required to be met to complete bond requirements. I've pulled out the other references in our zoning code. 2 performance bonds, there's a rural ag kennel, cluster housing, aquifer protection ordinance, that call out, this is the performance that needs to be met, to complete that bond, so to speak. And then going through the Charlestown ordinance, I thought they had a ton of really good content in there. They specifically cover residential, small commercial, agricultural, commercial, large commercial as separate things there. I'd say it's worth, if we don't want to do residential, that's fine, carve everything else out. In that one, anything over 1 megawatt is large commercial and cannot exceed 150 acres. So that's, that kind of conflicts again with the acreage we were talking about. They talk about the site plan, making sure you detail emergency response, making sure the fire department has a manual for how should they respond, where are the disconnects located, where that the contact info for the system owner should be posted on site. That
Well, that shouldn't be in the zoning, that's part of the site plan.
well, the site plan, like requiring what is of the site plan.
That should be in the site plan regulations, not in the zoning, in my opinion.
Okay.
And of course, we'd ask for fire department review of it.
Right, but it's saying you have to make sure the fire department has a plan that when they come to your site, how will they disconnect it?
I understand. I mean, I would think the fire department would tell us that. They
No.
want that.
But this is the reverse, that, hey, the fire department isn't an expert
I
in
understood. Okay.
solar. Fencing requirements, if it gets to a certain size, security requirements, land clearing requirements, erosion control, stormwater infiltration. Again, this isn't all stuff I'm saying that we need to do, but it's stuff that has been considered that we haven't even discussed.
Well, erosion control and sedimentation control, if you get over 100,000 square feet, it's all a state thing anyway. It's all alteration terrain permit.
Okay?
And the alteration terrain permit is gonna be, the towns I've worked in is a lot more difficult to meet their requirements than is any town's requirements.
They have a whole section on mitigating glare, which we briefly mentioned at the last meeting. I think clarifying, we talk about setbacks, when you have a system that's moving, what part of that can't cross the setback? Is it, what time of day? Is it the post? Is it the closest, again, like,
None of it ever, in my opinion.
but I don't have a strong stance, but we're not, I just feel like we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants here.
I wouldn't
Again,
know.
requirements on like not lighting it too much, or, I don't have a particular outcome, but just to have the discussion, I think is important, to go through all this before we commit to these things that can take 40 years. Defining abandonment as part of the decommissioning. I saw 5 months, I saw 6 months, I saw 5 years, I saw 6 months, same thing, like, because I think as written, they could just sit there for 40 years, and there's nothing we can do about it.
We've got 90 days.
What's that?
It says 90 days,
Where is that?
3811.
Okay, nope, that's great. Yeah, I think there's a fair amount that is worth considering. And again, I am in favor of this kind of thing, just I don't think we have considered everything, and that we have a dedicated energy committee that could just tear this apart on behalf of the planning board and say, hey, because we know they're in favor of it too, I assume they're in favor of it too.
I would like to speak when I have a chance.
Well, the planning board has a motion and a second, so I'm not sure we should open it up to the public for discussion at this point. I'm not sure I can. Matter of fact, I'm sure I can't. Any more discussion on the board? So the motion is to,
Mr. Chairman,
pardon me?
point of order, if I may.
Sure, why not? Come to the podium though, please.
Pardon me?
Come to the podium, please.
Yeah. And I'll state my name and I'll state my address. Brian Campana, Quaker Street, Ware, of course. I'm not sure, I like to hear some of I like the direction some of the opinions are going here, but I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to hear from the public also
But we
to
have a
help with
motion in
that.
front of the board that we have to act on.
I'm willing to rescind my second.
He has a se- oh,
And the motion is to rescind this
Right.
and wait until, and do it next year,
to
and
table
spend a
it.
year doing it and redo it for 2026.
Okay. All right, well, I think that maybe your discussions in the motion might have been a little bit premature if you had opened up the public hearing. So, okay,
I understand.
all right, thanks.
I'm,
withdraw the motion.
yeah.
Okay, so the motion was withdrawn. So we're back to discussion. You had your hand up first, sir. Come to the podium, state your name, address, and all that good stuff.
I'm David Erickson. I'm the current chair of the Ware Energy Commission. And thank you, Salem, for alerting me to this. I should have been paying attention. And I thank the whole board for taking this up. As Salem stated, this is definitely worth doing, valuable work, and it's complicated. I've spent, I don't know, 8 hours over the last 2 days trying to catch up. Sounds like Salem's been working. There's a lot to this, and we don't want to mess it up. So I want to get this on the books quickly, but it sounds to me as if we need another, some more time. I don't know whether any of you were able to get my email today from...
I made a copy and gave it to everybody.
Oh, excellent, because I had a couple copies here. But for the public, may I just state a few of the main points that were suggested by Clean Energy New Hampshire. The town of Ware has a membership, thank goodness, to Clean Energy New Hampshire, because they were willing to do a lot of legwork for us, but they didn't get it to me till this morning. They suggest, on your first point, that you might want to consider just skipping the top value because it could be interpreted by some law firm as being an undue encumbrance or prevention of solar construction in the town. And since no one's going to do an array over 5 megawatts under current guidelines, regulations, they suggest you might want to just leave it out and allow that reality of the 5 megawatt cap on net metering to take care of that one for you. So that's a suggestion. They also suggested that there might be a site in town that is near to, larger power lines, but not in the agricultural zone, or not in the 3 zones you listed, commercial, agricultural, and industrial. So you might want to give a little leeway on that to, say, at planning board discretion or something like that, in case there was a good site, very near to one of those zones.
I think you'll find that the other zoning districts
Yeah,
There aren't any lots big enough to put a solar array on.
Well, there wouldn't be in village, for sure.
Residential.
I,
Either the straight residential village district would be,
you don't think you would have a,
they're all 2-acre lots.
but since, well, you may have made a new version of this, but if your lower limit is 10 kilowatt, yeah, 10 kilowatt installations, what if you have a 11, 12 kilowatt installation, which would be small? I think you may want to give some more leeway to say the planning board may require all of this stuff rather than shall, because you might think that it was reasonable at the time of a smaller site plan to not be quite as stringent as you would definitely want to be on a, 5 megawatt plan or something in that range. And the same with the woodland buffer. I think you'd want to say it may be required if, for a larger array, for being near nice residential areas, or whatever considerations you would put in for that. The end of life also, I think, again, for that small 11 kilowatt array, to require them to hire an engineer every 5 years seems excessive, where for the larger array, that's routine. That's what a large installer like Revision would expect that you would be demanding. But it's certainly important that you're thinking about decommissioning. I wish that we had things in place for decommissioning all kinds of things that we buy. I think we spoke about that on the phone. Automobiles and so forth. So that would, for the performance bond or other financial tools that could be used besides a performance bond, and you might want to consider those as well. I guess I've said just pretty much what I need to say, but unfortunately it looks to me as if we need another year, and our commission's willing to continue working on this, and we've both come up with other towns' regulations to look at for guidance as we go forward. But thanks again for taking this on. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You had his hand up first. He beat you.
If it was, sorry, Mike Jorgensen, 29 General Knox Road, Ware. Just to be clear here, it looked like we were very close to having a second, to have this pushed out a year. Out of respect to everybody here, getting back to their wives, family, children, can we please move forward with the proper procedure here, if you're not going to vote for it in its current state?
Well, the motion was withdrawn, so we can't vote on anything right now.
I'm asking to see if we can put it back on the table.
We
'cause
can't
it was-
not until we finish public discussion.
Great. All right, well, in the spirit of public discussion, might as well.
I'm not going to stop public discussion, I'll let anybody speak.
No, I understand that. I just thought we had reached a point that it was crystal clear that this wasn't going to pass anyway, and we didn't need to go through this process for another year. I was trying to look out for the citizens of the community. All right, so a few different points here that I wanted to address. First of all, as we know, rural agricultural land is primarily used for agricultural purposes. I think it's pretty clear to most of us here, common sense dictates.
No, it's not.
Well,
Most of it's
I
woodlands.
will still speak.
Woodlands.
For most of us here, that primarily agricultural purposes does not include a solar array. To that point, if rural agricultural needs to be primarily for agricultural purposes, should a solar array generate more funds than the rural agricultural zone produces otherwise, it should then be listed as a commercial zone, which is an entirely different conversation. It also sets a terrible precedent for the town, as we have we have over 1,000 acres in town that fit the same criteria of being listed as a dual zone rural agricultural, rural conservation land. And this could be set up in any one of our backyards. And I think that's why a lot of us are out here today. If we're going to get past that point, one of the key things I wanted to talk about was the disposal process. I'm glad you guys are forward-thinking and have brought that up. It needs to be something that is clear-cut and understood, because these things are awful for the environment on the disposal side. There's no good plan for disposing of most of it. It's mostly glass and harmful chemicals that goes into landfills. Lastly on the list, I know we have some concerns about wetlands and various animal activity with that. One of the sorry, having trouble speaking. One of the animals that is also key to our environment here and where are bats. Bats make up a key resource in this town. There are 8 different bat species in the state of New Hampshire, 4 of which are on the endangered species list. That includes the northern long-eared bat, the tricolored bat, the eastern small-footed bat, and the little brown bat. Should this proceed onward, I propose that we have an environmental study done to make sure that none of these bats are being harmed by it, as many studies of solar arrays have shown bat populations can be reduced by 50% or more when they're brought into the area. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
How are you guys tonight?
So far, so good.
Good. I'm glad you opened it up for public discussion. My name is Victor Tebow, 765 Concord Stage Road. Okay? One of the things I was glad you opened it up for public comment was because it'll give you guys an idea, if you go back to rewrite this, what the townspeople are actually looking for, you know? I'm gonna go with this gentleman's discussion on the rural agricultural part. So, my first question is, do you know how many acres in town are rural agricultural zoned?
Not off the top of my
No.
head, no.
Okay, so, according to the Historical Society, okay, now we all have seen the map, okay, but this town is 57 square miles, 640 acres to a square mile, okay? That equates to, let me get my glasses on here, so I can do the quick math for you. 36,480 acres to make up the town of Ware, okay? As you guys can see by this map, the green is your rural agricultural, okay? If I had to estimate, I'd say 60-70% of the town, roughly. On the low side, I'm gonna go with 60%, 21,888 acres. Now, if we divide that by the amount of homes here in town, okay, residences, 9,000, I think it was 88. What's that?
That's people.
People? Okay,
We send out 4,000, 5,000 tax bills.
all right.
Not all.
So, according to the realtor market and whatnot, they said we're roughly 48 homes per square mile, I think is what it rounded off to being. Anyways, if you do that, divide out the math, it averages that each home is 13.3 acres. Now, let's assume that most people use 25% of their land. That's what, 3.5 acres, roughly? Leaves a remainder of 10. By passing this in a rural agricultural zone, allows the potential, if we took 75% of our 21,000 acres, leaves 16,416 acres of available land, okay, which then we can fit 2,000 solar panels per acre, equates to 32,832,000 panels that you're allowing to be potential in town. 32 million panels. Now, let's say not everybody's going to do that. Let's say only 10% of them do. There's still 3.2 million panels in town. Is that what you want to see? Driving up and down the streets when the leaves fall? I don't. That's not why I moved here. And that's especially why I moved to rural agricultural. Okay? Now, the other benefit to this, or I'll say negative, according to the National Renewable Energy, okay, right now, recycle rate on an electric panel is $28 per panel. Do out the math. That means in 20 years, when they need to be redone, $91.9 million. Do we have that in our budget to take care of that? I know you put in decommissioning.
But it's not the town doesn't own these things.
Okay, but if it comes to the landfill, that's $1.38 a panel. You got $4 million sitting in the account?
It's better be in the performance bond.
Okay, but now you're gonna add the word may. So who's accepted and who's not? How many panels is the town gonna be responsible for?
I understand.
Can you answer those questions? Okay. Anyways, we already have provisions in our zoning for rural agricultural, okay? It says for residential use only, not commercial. We have commercial property for that. That's why I didn't buy near commercial property. If you want to put in enough power to feed 1,000 to 1,500 homes on a piece of land, I don't want that next to me. That's commercial. A farm is not commercial. A farm stand is not commercial, according to New Hampshire law. So I think there needs to be some rethought on this proposal, and that maybe we need to take off the rural agricultural. You want it in industrial, you want it in commercial, that's what that land is for. Now, I'm not saying, how about another suggestion? Maybe we allow this on Class 6 roads. We put them on Class 6 roads, what happens? The town benefits. We gotta upgrade the road to get there, right? Maybe that becomes a cost that incurs to them. Thank you. Unless you got any questions.
No. Neil, you want to come up and say something?
Hi, Craig.
Something new, preferably.
I'm afraid, Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road, I'm afraid that you're going to be hearing a lot of the same things tonight because,
If we're ever going to talk about this being in a rural agricultural zone, we don't want to repeat that
yeah,
for the
okay.
next half hour. We've got that. I
I'd like,
got it in my brain. We don't want it in rural.
I
you
got,
don't want it in rural.
there are 3 points that I'd like to make. The first point is that this is a major change. Right now, we do not allow any commercial activity in the rural agricultural zone. And when people bought their property, when I bought my property, I knew that was the case. Now, I understand zoning can change. That's always the risk that you take. But not in this way. The way you've set it up, it would be possible for a landowner to come in and put up a solar array, and I would have to be faced with looking at that for the next 40 years, assuming I live that long. That's not what WARE is all about. Point number 2, and by the way, if you're going to do something like this, you really should coordinate this with the next master plan, because this kind of a change needs to be reflected in that document, or that document should be the basis for this kind of a change. So you might want to wait more than a year, unless the master plan is going to be revised within a year. The second point is that there are problems with this ordinance. This ordinance was written in a very non-professional way. I don't believe it was reviewed by your lawyer, because I haven't heard any comments. And once your lawyer looks at this, the town lawyer looks at this, I think he's going to offer an extraordinary number of major suggested changes. This is written in such a way that any developer or any person who wants to put these things can drive through this with a Mack truck. It is very loosely written. And for example, Bruce was even proposing some changes, substantive changes. But the language is written in a way that too many people can do too many different things. Remember, right now, this is not an allowed use. The only way that a person could put in one of these arrays now is to get a variance, which could be done. It's not that difficult. You could get a variance, say you wanted to put in a large one on a 1,000-acre tract, or a 250-acre tract, or a 100-acre tract. You could get a variance.
Not sure about that, but okay.
No, it's not a guarantee, but you have a good chance to get it.
Okay.
Specifically, there are problems with section 38.4 and 38.5. Bruce has tried to address these, but I think the language that he's proposing is unclear, and vague and probably would need to be rethought and strengthened. The idea that under 38.5 that you're going to have a buffer to soften the impact is language that is meaningless. One tree could soften. Take a look at what we've done with the storage sheds opposite the Langtot Center. There were supposed to be all sorts of plantings there so it wouldn't be visible from the road. Didn't happen. Soften is not an adequate word to describe this kind of thing, and you could go through this ordinance and pick out these other problems also. And the third point I want to make is about the process. This is a major change, and with all due respect to the planning board, this was sprung on us, the townspeople, at the last minute. Those folks who had been watching your hearings heard you say, well, you know, after a certain date, we're not going to have new stuff, and then all of a sudden, this comes in after that date. Wow. That's not the way things should be done. We need to have time, we, the townspeople, need to have time to understand and digest these things. This isn't a technical change, no problem with those. A definition because something wasn't unclear. This is a major policy change, and it's put in at the last minute. For those three reasons, I would ask that you turn this down, and if it's going to go forward, at least have it reviewed by a lawyer before you put it forward to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jackie Pratt, Winter Road. I have actually I have a lot of concerns about this. First, it concerns me that you, Bruce, would not answer Mr. Bolton when you brought up this proposed warrant at the 12/12 Planning Board meeting. He asked who you spoke to, and you responded.
If you're going to single out people, let's not go there. We're talking about this ordinance.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, talk about the ordinance then.
I am. I'm talking about the planning board and how not everybody's on board with it. So I would respect that you respect me, have the floor right now. And I quote that it
I
wasn't.
respect you not mentioning people's names.
I'm not mentioning anyone's.
Yes, you did. You mentioned Bruce.
Because he's on the planning board, and it's in the minutes, and it's on the YouTube video, so I have every right to do that. And he said, I quote, that I didn't speak to anyone from this committee or any other committee. Why can't we know who you spoke to? Why can't your fellow board members know who you spoke to? You're creating a warrant for this town that your own planning board isn't up to speed on. You shared more about this on the Facebook social page than you have with this board. That is not your board. It consists of 5 members, not just one person. You can't include your peers on who you spoke with, but you're going to sit there and propose this warrant and say it's by the whole planning board. I feel that this should have been on the planning board's agenda for at least a few months so that your peers could be more informed about it. It sounds like only you were involved in it, and you were very aloof when you were speaking about other people that you spoke to. Shouldn't this be something generated from the incoming data in the master plan development? Because I'm pretty sure the existing master plan has no information or input on this subject. I feel this should be tabled till the whole planning board can be more familiar, not just one person. So I looked into it, and what is the drive for this need right now? Has the town been approached or individuals by commercial vendors to put in solar farms? Is there an expectation that these will lead to tax shelters or tax exemptions associated to this? And also, Mr. Bolton had asked this question at the 12/12 meeting, and I don't know if someone didn't know or just didn't answer him, but a 5 million watt array takes up to 20 to 30 acres of land. A Unitel project in Kingston is being built on 39 acres. This is a huge impact on a town. Also, who's going to be policing the 38.10 of the solar warrant to ensure that the plan is updated and the bond is increased for inflation risk? Why is this going to be a special exception in all districts and not just commercial district only? Something this big should have been brought to conservation and to the energy. I saw the BOS meeting on 12/30 where the chair for energy knew nothing of this discussion, even though town administrator said that she did invite him personally to the meeting. I watched the conservation committee meeting last night, and they knew nothing of this warrant. They were not notified, so they also had a discussion, and they're not in support of it. So the last part is, it's a personal question that I do have for one person, but I feel I have a right to ask it. My concern is that, Mr. Fulmore, you do have a business in town called Homes for a Lifetime, which is a green energy home business. It does include solar panels. It is listed with the Department of Energy, ID number 1380. It's located on 1225 River Road, so I looked up that address. That's a commercial business that I don't know, it says CJ Bolton Inc., I don't know what that is. So I looked more into your LLC, and it says that Chris Bolton is your manager, but I'm not concerned about that. I was concerned that you're listed as a point of contact and a member. So my conflict of interest for you is the person that's doing your solar for these homes, did they approach you about solar farms?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Frank, hopefully you have something new.
I do, well,
Good.
Frank Campana again.
Yes.
My first point was a point of order. So now that you've opened it up, that I see to the public, okay, I'm going to take that track.
Okay?
A couple of things about the initial draft here. You made 38.8, 38.9. You made the change of word from shall to may on both of those.
Yes.
I remember over the years past, there was an older fellow that would attend the deliberative sessions for the town, and I think he was an educator, actually. I think he's passed away. But every time he saw the word shall, he made a correction to, I'm sorry, when the word may, to actually put the word shall. The word shall is a commitment. When you change this to the words may, you're giving the applicant of this here, you're giving them the opportunity whether they may do something or not do something.
Well, we were adding as required by the planning board, so it gave the planning board the right to not ask for it. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, okay.
I agree. Shall is a very, very strong word.
Okay, thank you for that. And earlier, when it was discussed about agricultural land, I do have to single out Mr. Fillmore. He said that there's agricultural land, but none of it is being used as agriculture. So what? The commission buys land, or they have agricultural land, and it's there to preserve. It's not necessarily there to be productive. It's there to preserve. And I would like to encourage anybody here in the night, tonight and listening, and to you folks, I happened to catch by chance the commission's, Parks and Rec, the Conservation Commission meeting last night, and I tuned in at the appropriate time. They were talking about this here and about being left out. I think that's a big mistake. But there was a gentleman sitting at this end of the table where Mr. Meany is sitting tonight. I don't know who the person is, but he spoke in regards to solar arrays, and I believe one in Maine. He mentioned something. I don't know what his company does. They do something clean up after, or I'm not sure. But he said after the solar array in Maine was made, there was nothing but silt at the bottom of a slope where it was made. And what struck me is mostly is that he also stated that when solar array companies come in, they buy land, and if it's forested, they clear cut everything.
Sure.
That makes sense. But still, it could be agricultural land, right? So they're clear cutting everything.
It could be zoned rural agricultural, yes.
And if you just bear me one more thing.
Sure.
On 38.6, can you tell me what Article 28 is that you would be exempting them from?
That's the wetland ordinance.
And you can give me the Cliff Note version if you'd like to.
Let me look it up and I'll give you one.
Okay, thanks. I suppose I should have done my homework, but,
Page 38 in the ordinance. Page 38.
I don't have it. Okay, thank you.
Basically, the intent of that ordinance is to protect the wetlands. What we are saying, what the ordinance is proposing, is there is a 50-foot wetland buffer and a wetland setback,
Okay,
and for newly created parcels, and there's a 25-foot wetland buffer. The ordinance goes on to state, I'm not sure how fast I'm going to find this, but there's an exemption for the buffers buffers are not required for road right-of-ways, class 5 roads, or road construction. It also does not apply to forest management or agricultural activities. There's also something in here, I'm not gonna be able to find it real quick, I'm sure, but I'll try.
28.7.
28.7? Yeah,
Well,
we gotta get a wetland permit to cross the wetland, and
You've given me enough, so you've given me enough, thanks.
so
I
what
appreciate it.
we're saying, originally, the way it was interpreted is, we were saying there was no setback, no buffer. That's not what we meant to say.
Well, but that's what the word is there, so whether the meaning is different or not,
Well, it meant to be for the road, for the access,
okay.
but anyway.
Could
Okay.
I add on a touch there? Just, it, just because you had paraphrased saying the purpose and intent is to protect the wetlands, but what it actually says is the purpose and intent is to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare by controlling and guiding the use of land areas which have been found to be subjected to high water tables over extended periods of time. The very first subpoint being prevent the development of structures and land uses on naturally occurring wetlands which could contribute to pollution of surface and groundwater by sewage or toxic substances, which has been mentioned quite a few times.
That was my Cliff Note version of that paragraph.
Again,
And that's what I asked.
clarify that because it has, I think it was,
Well, again, when I saw the exemption and now that I hear, the input of what Article 28 is, I think by having that portion in there, you're catering to a company. And when you're catering to the company, then that company comes for the solar array company, then they're gonna come first before any neighbors, any abutters, or the town in general. When you exempt them from something. When you exempt them from something, when other people have to meet what you both just read. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I am gonna repeat a few things.
First, your name and address. for the record.
Sure, Debbie Conant, 270 Tiffany Hill Road.
Please don't repeat very much, because it's already almost 8 o'clock.
Trust me, I've sat in your seat many hours, I understand. One of the things I'd like to correct is that you said there were no tax exemptions for commercial, but there are in New Hampshire, unless Ware does something different. So there is a tax exemption for commercial solar arrays. Secondly, I think that, as this gentleman said, that rural agricultural is so large, it's not fair. Also, the master plan, 20 years out of date. I understand you have to do it, you're in the process of redoing it, but you shouldn't, they sort of drive the zoning. And we should really take a look at that before we proceed with zoning changes. Also, in the spirit of transparency, we should talk about how many acres it involves, how many solar panels it involves. People don't understand exactly what we're talking about until they see it in print. We're talking thousands of solar arrays, not 5, 10, 15. So I'm in favor of tabling this, maybe looking at it another time, and sort of going through the logistics a little bit more.
Thank you.
I just have one more question, just real quick, just food for thought. If this all transpires the rural agricultural, and I'm not getting into it, what I'm asking is how will it affect any districts that are overlay districts? Just as a food for thought. You know what I'm saying? We have a bunch of overlay districts that cover over rural agricultural, so would this trump those, or how would that all work? I'm just asking.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I know it's 8 o'clock, so I'll be quick. Andrew Moran, 79 Road, 791 Concord Stage Road, Executive Director of Regenerative Roots, the owner of the place. Heard a lot of discussions about, I guess, agriculture and solar being mutually exclusive. I would put before this board that they don't have to be. There's a lot of innovative and new agricultural businesses and organizations that combine solar arrays and agriculture. So that would be the only thing that I would add, is that it doesn't need to be a strict delineation between agriculture and solar. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing nothing, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion from the board.
Yes, I would seek some clarification on where this came from. That did sound like a conflict of interest.
There's no conflict of interest there.
Okay, so,
I'm not,
I've proposed many, many articles and nobody knows where I got those numbers.
Right.
Who helped me? I'm sure everybody has proposed many articles and got help, and not
hey,
proposed who helped too. That does not matter. What matters is the article.
but if a,
If he has a conflict, he should step down. I agree.
right,
And I think Bruce would have done that.
and so you are asserting that your,
Bruce is saying he has no conflict. Let's move on.
so his business partner in a solar business who is interested in a gigantic solar project was not involved in this.
that business partner has not been my business partner for 8 years.
So he was involved in this.
No, he was not.
Okay, that was the question. You answered a different question. Okay,
He said he has not been his partner for 8 years.
okay.
So obviously he hasn't done anything for 8 years. If we're gonna start talking about people, we're gonna close the public hearing, we're gonna turn the TV off, and we're gonna have a non-public meeting.
Okay.
And I'm serious, we will. Chuck?
You know, I don't even know how to phrase this, but I am aware, and I brought this up to the planning board a few months ago, of an offer that was made to tie up hundreds of acres of land for solar array. So it isn't like something that never could happen. To the best of my knowledge, this hasn't moved forward, but at least it did happen.
I'm sure it has happened. Anybody else? Comments, questions?
I move we put off Article 1 and Article 2 until next year.
Second.
Discussion. I do want to point out that the planning board for the last 4 years have been trying to get money from the selectmen to update the master plan, and we're unable to. So we're trying to do it on our own with no money. So FYI, we are working on that as well. Anyway, so we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Nay.
So it failed, so the motion passes 4-1. So we're gonna skip right to the third item on the agenda, which is to add a definition for accessory living space. Which basically says the accessory living space is the inside, from the inside of the wall to the inside of the wall. Can I ask a question? I haven't been here for a couple meetings. Why are we doing this?
Primarily because they were trying to measure from outside wall to outside wall, so
Isn't that the way every structure is measured, from outside to outside? I get a 26 by 36 house, that's the outside dimensions.
correct.
There's been cases where people have been able to convince the ZBA that bathrooms weren't living space, hallways and stairways weren't living space. And it's clarifying that all that is living space. The extent of the living space is to the inside of the outside wall. To give them the benefit.
Where else is this mentioned in the zoning ordinance?
Nowhere. That's the problem. Nowhere. That word, accessory living space, if you look in the ADU special exception, the word accessory living space is used.
In our zoning?
Yes.
Okay, here we go again. Where am I going with this? 19 what? Thank you. One accessory attached dwelling unit shall be permitted to a single-family dwelling residence in its residential land, the road above, a special exception for there further. Where does it say anything about accessory living
When you
space?
get to the square footage limitation,
It's the next one down, 19-1, 10-1.
Oh, it's not, I was looking for a number,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a, not a,
accessory living space.
guess,
So this is mainly for clarification for everybody of what that living space entails.
Correct.
I thought it was good that it, it specifically calls out, not counting shared entryways, hallways, stairways. It does seem like it would belong to the primary. It does seem odd to not count the exterior.
And the reason I did
Has to be
that,
counted somewhere.
the reason I did that is because some of these ADUs are in basements where the exterior wall, when you put a framed wall inside of the foundation wall, it can be over a foot thick. And that area adds up fast. So in order to give them the benefit of the doubt to maximize that space, I proposed the interior surface of the exterior wall.
But then, would we, I guess, does that not, we don't count non-accessory living space that way.
Why not change Article 19.1.10.1 instead of saying such accessory living space, say such accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 750 square feet? Seems real simple, guys.
What was that again, 19?
19.1.10.1, page 26. It says such accessory living space shall not exceed 750 feet. Instead of that, say such accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 750 feet.
Does that cover for you the last statement of the proposed one about shared entryways, hallways, stairways? I think it's a good clarification, but if,
To me, it
I
does.
defer to you on that one. But
I was trying to figure out why this was in here. I couldn't, and I apologize, I've missed several meetings from personal reasons, but
If you just change that, that suffices the definition for accessory dwelling unit.
Do we have accessory dwelling unit definition?
should we, yes.
Is there a word missing from 19.1.10.1? 2 words, should that be square feet?
It should be, yes.
should be. Yes, we have a definition. So, I mean, within or attached, provided independent living.
Definitions on page
What is
12,
it?
Article 4.
There's nothing that
Sanitation.
defines it.
750 square feet.
Doesn't say except it's attached, attached to a single dwelling. I don't know of, the only situation that I know of where you deal with interior dimensions is condominiums. And I've never heard of anybody talking about inside dimensions for anything. You buy a 26 by 36 house, that's the outside dimensions, the foundation at least. I think you're making it difficult.
I do think that covers what I was getting at. I think it does exclude the shared entryways, hallways, and stairways, the edit you're suggesting, because it says it's an independent living facility, so if it's truly independent, then it's not shared.
Right.
So,
So we just change with such accessory living space shall not exceed 750, or such accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 750, make it square feet, so it's right while we're doing it. Does that make sense?
I think there's still some ambiguity there on how people come up with the size, the square footage.
So then the square footage would be changed to include hallways and bathroom.
Anything within a 700 square foot area. It doesn't mean that you can't knock out a wall for a hallway or knock out a wall for a bathroom. Or make part of the bathroom part of your living space if it's on an ensuite.
Would you say it's still,
It leaves open to interpretation where they measure from.
Well, that's the problem really with the building inspector, isn't it? Not with the.
No,
regulations.
no, it's a special exception, because a special exception is required, and one of the requirements of special exception is it can only be 750 square feet.
So if I'm gonna build I gotta do some math here.
Yeah, but if somebody comes in and says, well, it doesn't include this, and then the inspector says, oh, you're right, there's the problem.
But if they granted the special exception based on that floor plan, the building inspector can't say anything.
So, what, they got a variance to do this?
Special exception.
A special exception?
So if I'm gonna build a 24 by 31 attached building to my house, have a little hallway between the two, breezeway between the two. To make it 750 square feet, I would actually have to build one bigger than that. So I'd be getting prices on a bigger building. Because 24 by 31.25 is 750 square feet.
Yep, so let's say you're inside of a basement, somebody's basement. Hold on a second.
What's the difference?
Because if you got a 10-inch foundation wall, a 2-inch air gap, and a 2x4 wall inside of that, you've got 10, 12, 15 inches you're losing inside the house, on 4 sides. So, right,
Well,
let's say,
you're assuming the whole house is 750 square feet if you're losing on all 4 sides, but yes.
so you're really down to closer to, of living space in there, 650 square feet.
Okay.
You lost 100 square
What's your
feet.
point?
That's when you're down to numbers that small, that's a pretty significant amount. That's a bathroom.
So its definition of a building includes the eaves, the definition of a accessory dwelling unit does not include the outside walls. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
It's up to, I mean,
It just
that,
doesn't make sense.
that's all I was trying to do, was
I understand what you're trying to do.
to make it
I remember hearing
clear
that- I remember hearing
on,
that zoning.
on what that square footage it can be.
I remember hearing that zoning variance application. I listened to that one.
Yeah.
Yes, and Craig, in your example, again, I'm harping on the shared stuff. You had an example, you have an ADU with a breezeway. What does that breezeway count towards? Main building to ADU?
Main building. Because it's for both of them.
Okay.
Shared, yeah,
Yeah, shared.
so it's not,
But my point is, when I did a subdivision in town, I had to make sure I located the eave to get the variance, because it was gonna be 5 feet off the eave, was the property line, had to get a variance for it. But now we're saying the building, the dwelling unit is from the inside, but the building itself is from the eave.
So if we add the eve onto those numbers I just told you,
I don't
it
think,
makes it
I
even
think we
worse.
should take the eave off, but personally, but that's, I wasn't gonna go there today.
I mean, you're gonna lose another 150 square feet if you had the eaves on there.
But your eve is only based for a setback, right? That doesn't go towards what it costs for a permit, does it?
I have no idea. I know it's in the setback regulations. I think it's overcomplicating it, but.
I'd be willing to make a motion with the language the chairman recommended. I think it makes sense.
Want to get some public input then?
Well, let's get
Yeah,
public
yeah,
input
sorry.
first.
Did you make
Or
a
is it-
change?
Pardon me?
Did you make a change?
We haven't made a change yet. I'm gonna ask for public input first.
Oh, there's-
Anybody from public like to speak? Well, that was quick.
I can make it quick.
You don't have to.
I know, you want to get over. David Erickson, 246 Poor Farm Road. Could you just put in that under circumstances where the wall thickness is significant, we can make a adjustment, something of that sort for the
Oh, geez.
few cases?
Oh geez, you're gonna make it.
Is it that,
you're
is
gonna
it
make
that hard to put in?
It's gray already. You're gonna make it really gray.
Well, only in circumstances where wall thickness makes a difference to the calculation.
Anybody else like to speak? Thank you, sir. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any other discussion? if you're gonna say that 750 minus the size of the walls, it's only 660 square feet, therefore it's too small. We should bump up to 750. That's my opinion. I think 750 is too small anyway.
State,
No, the state, it says you can't have it any smaller than
That's the
750.
minimum by the state. You can make it 55,000 if you wanted to. I don't want acres a little big, so a little higher than that, you know.
I think Bedford was 1,000.
A lot of towns have moved it up to 1,000, but I think that's a question for another day.
I don't want to steal your thunder, but just,
Pardon me?
I don't want to steal your thunder. I thought your edit was good, but I'm happy to make the motion, just to get it on the table. All right, I move that we replace the, well, I guess if I could, let me pause that motion for a minute. So we've removed 1 and 2, so are we now discussing a proposed amendment number 1?
I guess we are, right?
Okay.
Well, you'll make that correction for your second public and final hearing.
That's true.
I just want to
Let's
make sure I
leave-
make
let's
the
leave it-
proper.
Let's leave it 3
Leave it 3, okay.
for tonight.
So I'm going to move that we amend the proposed, gosh,
Definition.
the proposed definition in, well, the proposed definition in amendment number 3 to instead state, well, no, it's not changing it. It's actually not going to be, it's not changing a definition any longer. It's not creating a definition any longer. It's
Correct.
an amendment to, so, all right, let me just clarify by starting over. I propose that we modify, proposed amendment number 3 to be an amendment of 19.1.10.1 to read as follows. An accessory dwelling unit shall be clearly incidental to the primary use of the property for single dwelling, and such accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 750 square feet and not contain more than 2 bedrooms with maximum occupancy per bedroom of not more than 2 person per bedroom. That's the best I can do.
That was good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Can I have a point of order on that?
Yeah, you didn't warn anybody you were gonna talk about 19.1.10.
Right, it's.
Thank you.
Kurt Markarian, Reservoir Drive. So to Salem's statement, this is a public hearing. It's been notified and sent out. You're now proposing something that wasn't sent out and notifying the public. So you're trying to make a change that shouldn't be made.
All right, I would like to withdraw my motion. I think that's a great point.
So it sounds like that one needs to be tabled.
No one's gonna
Okay.
get scrapped.
Another brilliant idea didn't work. I get a lot of brilliant ideas that don't work. That was my dad's favorite things.
Move we table number 3.
Second.
Discussion. Why?
Just so it doesn't end up on the warrant.
So you're just gonna scrap the whole thing rather than,
Well, I think we have a good edit for next go round.
oh, we could make the definition say accessory living space shall mean exactly the same as accessory dwelling unit. And that does the same thing as amending 19.1.10.1.
At the cost of
But I was kind of
of slightly convoluting it, but
But I'm being
Yeah.
very facetious at the same time. Just a little.
Not you.
Just a little, baby. You guys take me too serious. Any other discussion?
Yeah, what did we do?
We haven't done anything yet.
Nothing yet.
We're about ready to we're about ready to,
Okay.
table this one till next year also. That's what it appears about we're about ready to do. No other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We're disagreeing a lot tonight. Okay, motion passed 4-1. Bruce said nay.
You tabled it?
To table it to next year, yes.
Because why do you waste the paper?
Well, this has been a very productive meeting. We're on to number 4. We've done nothing so far except table everything. So number 4 is add a new section to the variance special exception expiration dates.
Craig, just for your minute taker, who made the motion and who seconded the table?
I
No
did
one says
Salem,
a name.
me and Salem.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So basically, we're saying that a variance of special exception is good for 2 years? Is that what this is saying?
Essentially, yes.
Okay. Instead of 1 year.
Right.
My first question is, why does it have to be the original landowner asking for an extension? If I own a piece of property and the landowner wants to get a special exception to cross the wetlands or whatever, to get in, to do something on my property, and we have a purchase and sale agreement, I sell it to him, he does a site plan, the special exception is no longer valid.
Well, it's good for the initial period.
But he can't get an exception, he can't get an
You
extension.
can't get the automatic extension. You can still.
Well, it doesn't say it's automatic either. That was my next question, but may be granted 1 2-year extension. It says may, it doesn't say shall.
Well, on the first one, the 1 2-year extension,
It's a shell.
Shall be valid if exercised in 2 years, yes.
right. But after that,
Goes on any
you
additional.
go back to the annual 2-year extensions to the original landowner only. The first
page,
one
the last
could be
page.
anybody.
What?
The first 2-year extension isn't for the original landowner, it's the,
The landowner, original, as listed on the original application, may be granted 1 2-year extension.
Yeah, then flip the page over.
yeah.
Is this assuming that the original landowner requested an exception or a variance, then sold the property, and that exception or variance is being passed on to whomever it is bought the property?
Pretty much that's how it works now, and it really has the same effect of giving perpetual variances and special exceptions, no matter who owns it. So this kind of puts a end to it. So if they sell a property, you know, their time limit expires and the new guy isn't entitled to that same,
So wouldn't it, if Pastor Bill goes for a variance, I buy his property, that variance transfers to me?
yes,
For 2 years,
till it expires.
but you can't ask for an extension.
So why doesn't it just, if
And with
he
me.
sells the property, why doesn't that variance go away and I, as the new owner, have to?
Because that's not how that's not how they work.
It used to be the variance went with the land forever, and the state changed it to 1 year.
So this is.
It's, the variance is for the land, not for the owner.
The state, well, they didn't change it to 1 year. They said the minimum time the town can grant them is for 1 year.
Oh, okay.
It can be longer.
Can it be shorter?
No.
It seems like if you sell the property, whomever bought the property should have to go for a new variance.
For the same exact use?
Yeah,
Why?
why not?
Money, time,
Duplication
words
of
I can't say out loud on TV?
Sound like George Carlin.
Like I said, if I own a piece of property, a guy wants to buy it, I'll give you a perfectly good example. I owned a lot, I got a variance for driveway off a private road. I sold it. I told the guy, hey, you better put the driveway in the next 3 months because the variance is gonna expire or ask for an extension. He built 30 feet of driveway. There was no other access except for the private driveway, private road. Well, technically there was, but there'd been a wetland crossing, a lot of other things involved, but, so why wouldn't the variance go with the land? The variance is for the land, it's not for the owner, the variance is for the land. I personally think variance should be good forever, but that's me.
Okay, now you and I disagree on one.
That's a start. And again, I don't see why it has to be the original landowner asking for an extension.
And I'm just quickly Googling, so I could be totally wrong, but what I remember seeing and what I'm seeing again is that the RSA says 2 years, not 1 year. So where does the 1 year come from?
State requires minimum 1 year.
2 years is what again, it's what I'm reading in,
I thought it was one.
this is 67433 powers of zoning board of adjustment.
What's our zoning say right now? I'm gonna look at 6.1.7, because that's where this is going.
They are six.
Well, that was 6.1.7, okay. What was your number?
I was looking at RSA 67433. And then
Page 421.
it calls out separately variances and special exceptions, both of them. Again, I'm skimming, so I could be wrong. I'm looking for better, everybody pile on here. What I'm seeing is 2 years.
Where are you at in this page and a half? 7433?
1A.
Oh, right away, too.
Is there a separate attachment that explains it?
Yeah.
Did you run for census here? Was that first response?
Variances authorized in this paragraph shall be valid for, if exercised, in 2 years.
And if that's the case, can we just stick with the default coming from RSA? And is it worth adding this language at
Well,
all?
I'm looking to see what our zoning, I think there's something in our zoning.
Yeah, I think it's 2 years.
Last time we talked about this, I thought I had it for a longer period and we dropped it down to 2 years.
It was for more than one extension.
Cycle, yeah.
It was for an unlimited number of extensions,
And then
and we
we
dropped
added
it
the
down,
two.
we dropped it down to one extension. But it was by my memory, it has always been a number of 2-year extensions. Previously it was an unlimited number, now one number. And then it became a may. And so, in my mind, the may kind of cancels it out anyway, because it is 2-year and may or may not. And so, is there actually anything that this changes above and beyond what the RSA already says?
I don't see anything in the RSA about an extension.
Yeah, there is.
Where's that, where was that?
Further down.
The only reference to variances authorized under paragraph 1 shall be valid if exercised within 2 years from the date of final approval, or as further extended by the local ordinance or by the zoning board of adjustment for good cause.
There is also, section 8, it's the very last section. Not to read the whole thing, I mean, I can, but, provided that the applicant may waive this requirement, consent to such extension as may be mutually agreeable. If a ZBA determines that it lacks sufficient information, make a final decision, does not consent to an extension, then it could deny. But it almost, again, that's section 8, very last one. That almost seems like it's up to the ZBA to decide if they want to do the extensions.
Or we change the ordinance to say you get a 2-year extension. That would be the local ordinance.
On the last page on that proposed ordinance, it says right there, extension request may be heard by the ZBA. Proper public notice.
Additional
only, yeah. And the butter notice is not required. Basically what you said, so.
So what I'm reading, the first paragraph is pretty much of the RSA. 2 years from final decision. I don't like the original landowner part for the extension personally. Or, I guess the other question is, do we want to just table this one as well?
I think we should go 4 for 4.
There's no option to change it, right?
Pardon me?
There's no option to change it tonight.
Yeah, we can change it tonight.
You can change it tonight.
Yes. So the way the RSA reads, the way I interpret it, the zoning board may grant an extension is all it says. Pretty much.
No time frames.
No. Obviously you have to have the application, you have to ask the extension
90
prior to the,
But there's
90
no-
days, I
there's
think
no
it says.
minimum extension time period on
Yeah,
that.
No.
90 days prior to the expiration, I think is what it said. Yeah, RSA says.
So how much are we allowed to change this? Can we change it from variance / special exception expiration to extension instead of expiration?
Like, are you thinking go as far as just, like, almost strip it down and say
I'm
minimum?
saying get rid of the first paragraph and leave the rest there.
I was thinking go even further and just say, like, minimum extensions by the ZBA shall be, when granted, shall be 2 years.
Minimum.
It sounded like that was kind of what we're trying to dial in on over, at least over there, and it seems like a nice clean.
So that's wherever.
Can we do that?
Well, no, it's, you keep it with the RSA language that the ZBA can, but the RSA doesn't specify for how long that
Or
would
how
last,
often,
and so
yeah.
we'd say they can grant it for, but the extension, must be for at least 2 years. And I guess we could say that there's only one of those.
I think I'll go along with your other idea of canning this one also.
Your idea.
I know. I was trying to get something done. We're 0 for 3.
Would you be acceptable or amenable to listening to those that are still here maybe, to see what their thoughts are?
To listen to who?
Public comment.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Anybody want to come up while we're thinking about this? Anybody talk? Yes, sir.
Again, Kurt Markarian, Reservoir Drive, also the vice chair of the ZBA. Looking at this, the statement in the second paragraph where the variance would only be granted, or excuse me, the extension would only be granted to the landowner is redefining how a variance is applied. It is applied to the property, it is not applied to a person.
Well, the landowner has to sign the application, though.
Understood.
That's
But-
what I assume this means.
Understood, but you're defining that extension of a variance to be to the landowner, not the land itself. You can't do that, because it already is defined as land, not the owner of the property. Furthermore, when you look,
So you're going along with my idea of we shouldn't be saying the original landowner. Is that what you're saying?
I am.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I understood. you.
However, when you look at that sentence there, applicant may be granted 1 2-year extension. Then you look at the last
Yeah.
paragraph, where any additional 2-year extensions to the original landowner only. Is it, they get more, or they only get 1? You're contradicting it within the, what you're trying to put out there. So,
Well, personally, I'd prefer that first may to be a shall. So the landowner, as listed on the original application, shall be granted 1 2-year extension. Then he may ask for more.
so
My preference, but
I guess my point would be then, why would we not just use the RSA 674.33 and not worry about this at all? Because it's already there. Those are my comments, that's all.
from my experience, if you do something and you go to, whatever the job is, I want to put a Dunkin' Donuts in someplace, and I get a variance to put this commercial building in a rural agricultural. I get the variance, I sell the property to Dunkin' Donuts LLC, whoever it is. They get a site plan. Planning board denies the site plan. They go to court. You need more than 2 years, buddy, to get that all done. That's, so therefore-
Agreed,
therefore
but they
it's-
could, they can apply for that extension because
Right,
it's
and then
with
you
the
can-
variance.
Then you can say no, when they've gotten all this work done, and you come back to a new ZBA and they say, no, we're not gonna grant you a variance. That's not fair to the applicant.
You
Yeah,
can
that's
only,
my
you
point.
can only deny it, though, if there's sufficient evidence that it was wrongly
I understand.
granted initially.
But members.
So
say-
you would be going to court either way if you denied it and you didn't have that evidence, because that's right in the zoning board
I
of adjustments.
I understand that, but
So-
everybody interpretation of that is different.
But
Members change.
but it's not a matter of interpretation, right? We have the RSA, it states what is required, and it's state RSA. It's right there.
It is, but the definition of unnecessary hardship is a little vague, because I personally don't think you ever have an unnecessary hardship, or almost never, I should say.
I won't disagree with that. I won't
say
disagree with
almost,
that.
because I did get
Yeah.
a variance, and I think I deserved it.
So, but,
That's different.
you know, I think
But I'm just saying
you're,
the members, what I'm saying is the members of the zoning board change, obviously.
Yep.
And therefore, their opinions and their whatever, their vote may change.
I have a great example of that. We just had a case earlier this week for an extension of a variance from 20 years ago. It was brought to us. We were asked to just grant that extension because that's what we've always done. I said, no. I want information to go with it because all I had was one little piece of paper. Didn't tell me anything about it. Applicant came to us. That variance had been granted nearly 20 years ago. Yet this person had to keep coming back because no one took the time to go, has that variance actually been acted upon? Had they taken that time, that poor applicant wouldn't have had to come back every 2 years. So it's in the best interest of any board, regardless of whether it's new or not, to ask questions. And to your point, yes, they can deny an applicant's extension request for a variance.
Sure they can.
But again, they have to have the evidence to have that denial. But if they don't ask the questions, they haven't done the research, that's when you're going to go to court. That's when you're going to lose because the applicant will have all that information. And so it's already in the RSA, how it's defined. And you're trying to define it as going with a person, not with the land. And that's one of the things we struggle with when we're in the ZBA, right? We have to remember, it goes with the property, not with the person.
So in the case that you brought up, Craig, is there verbiage in the RSA? Because if I read the first paragraph there, valid if exercised within 2 years from the final decision. So if you sell the land to DD and there's a problem, haven't they started that process that would say that they're
Purchasing the land, they started the variance process?
whatever it is that drove them to court, right?
Well, what I'm saying is that you get the variance, you're going through the site plan process, I sell the land, and I don't have any land being for sale for Dunkin' Donuts, I was serious, I do not. You get to the site plan process, that could take 9 months to get here, to go through the whole application, then we come up and deny it.
But then if they've gone into the site plan, if there's verbiage like there is in paragraph 1 here, they've started that process.
I was eliminating paragraph 1.
So variance of special
I
exception
was taking
granted.
paragraph 1 out of there.
Okay.
So it would start the landowner original, which I was also taking out as listed.
Work or other planning applications have commenced or.
So I would say, I've also been on a planning board, and I understand that, a lot of times variants are granted before an applicant comes before the planning board for site plan review.
Sure, it's the first thing you do if you need one.
Right. In some cases, though, they will come before you prior to going for a variance because they want to make sure that everything is in order so that when they do go for that variance, there's no delay in acting upon that variance and moving forward.
Yeah, I've gotten blindsided of that a few times personally, but.
Okay, but what you need to do as a board, put personal things aside.
I'm retired, so that's done.
But again, you act as a board as to what's in front of you, not by what has happened to you. You have to go by the ordinances that are in front of you,
Yeah,
the RSAs that are in front of you from the state.
What we're talking about is revising the ordinance.
I understand. My question is, why would you need to revise the ordinance when you have an RSA that defines it all for you.
I'm not sure it defines the extensions.
I think it does, based on the fact that it states that, you know, it'll come before the local
It doesn't say
government.
how long. It doesn't say you have to grant one.
No, it doesn't.
You can grant a 2-month extension. I gotta come back in 2 more months to do it again.
And then that's when they could say that they have an unreasonable, you know, timeframe. So, you know, I think it's at the discretion of the zoning board as to how to interpret that RSA and use it to benefit not only the town, but the applicant as necessary. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Travis Corcoran, 275 Quaker Street. I also serve on the ZBA. I've got sort of two things I can say. One is about 60 seconds, one is about 10 minutes. Let's start with the 60-second one and hopefully avoid the other. First of all, I think that, not on the table because it's a confusing term, but in the air is the concept of tabling this for the next year. I'd like to speak to that, and if you do not table and proceed, then I've got a lot more to say, but, so is it possible to just speak to the tabling thing and then come back later? I'm seeing a nod, yes. Okay, great. Take that as a commitment. Thank you.
Only because it's 8:45.
Right. I think that, first of all, I agree with everything that the previous speaker said. I think that this language is defined in RSA 674:33. I think that I think that the draft that the board has right now has not been well thought out about its integration with that, and its, and we want cooperation between the enabling RSA and this warrant article. I think that we run a risk if we go forward this evening with getting a warrant article that is incompatible with the RSA. There are a couple of different areas there, but one specifically is there is some discussion about saying that the ZBA must, and that is the word that is being used, must issue an extension. I believe that that is a separation of powers concern, and I do not believe that the planning board has the ability to force the ZBA.
No, we do not.
Okay.
But the citizens do.
Valid. So that is a valid distinction, but I don't think that so the ZBA has certain powers.
I'm not trying to cram anything down your throat.
No, that was a great point, and you're exactly right, because you're not just changing the zoning code, you're putting warrant articles before the citizens. But the separation of powers issue still holds, I believe. So right now, at the federal level, the president has certain powers, Congress has different powers, and Congress cannot pass a law that says the president must veto something or the president must issue, those powers are reserved for the president. So for a warrant article fashioned by the planning board, and even if it was voted on by the citizens, to say the ZBA must issue an extension, I think that the RSAs give the ZBA the authority to hear appeals for extensions and to decide those. And I do not think that the planning board and or the citizens can take that power away. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to temporarily close a public hearing. Maybe temporarily. What's the board think?
Same as the other three.
Have a motion?
Was that a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we table this number 4.
Do we have a second?
Second.
How did I know you were going to do that? Discussion? I personally like it when variances are good forever, but anyway. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jesus. Opposed? Nay. Passed 4-1.
So there's no public hearing 2 weeks from now, so. 10 states.
Thank you for shortening the warrant,
10 states. are
Yeah,
saying
the warrant's a lot shorter now, guys. They were leading 3-0. What's the score now?
Could I ask a question?
Wait, not until I see the score.
Please?
Still 3-0.
Please, may I ask a question?
Sure.
No, I said please, I meant please do.
What's so special about August 19th, 2013?
I think that's whenever variances were good forever.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think that's the date they changed. I don't have anymore.
But
I
it's,
had
there's no extension in the RSA.
automatic.
It should be the very last section.
You can ask.
Correct. But it says it will terminate, but shall be valid if exercised within 2 years. So if they don't,
What's exercised?
well, according to ours,
Our ordinance
you
doesn't
act
say.
on it. Yeah, ours doesn't say.
Usually that means break ground. That's hard to do sometimes. Even for a subdivision, it's hard to do. It is. To get all the financing of it, it's really,
No, there's
2 years
no-
is not very long.
There's nothing that deals with except extensions.
Once upon a time, I did
What
a
year is
job
that
in
one?
an unknown town.
2013, August
I
19th.
did, I got a variance for the slope of a road.
Was
I had to
the
get a
date
variance, I
that-
couldn't do it with him. I got the variance, the fire chief backed it up. Everybody was happy. By the time I got everything together, got the planning board, we had a new fire chief and the 2 years expired.
The new fire chief didn't agree with it.
New fire chief didn't agree with me. Job was done, right there. I think that's just plain wrong.
Would-
but-
That's not, the extension is beyond the 90 days after application.
Would it be reasonable to pick a time frame? I think most everybody would agree, stop me if you don't, but if we could start this whole process earlier in the year,
I think we'll be pretty well tied up with master plan for a while, aren't we?
well, it's gonna be spun off. The proposal was to hand that back to the subcommittee. I guess it was get approval. I guess I was gonna propose, can we talk like June? June being, all right, what do we really wanna make sure is well researched? Who we're gonna talk to, energy committee, whatnot? Like, make sure we're not, and not to say it has to be decided in June by any means, but like, what kind of,
I think
make
it's-
sure we're not surprising people.
I think it needs to start in May if you're gonna do that.
I think
because-
we are starting right after the town vote.
Yeah, April.
Sure. I just,
Because otherwise, because if you start in June,
People are on vacation.
July and August is gonna hit or miss.
oh, that's fine. I was trying to pick
You know.
something that I thought would
So
fly.
if we start in April,
Earlier
right
the
after the
better.
town meeting, that would be better.
Is it possible to have a committee to do these things?
You gonna chair it?
No.
That was quick.
Well, because I think the work of a separate committee seems to fly a lot better than just the planning board itself determining what's gonna be done. So, we can talk about that later, I guess.
If we're gonna do separate subcommittees, I don't think you'd want a subcommittee for all the zoning ordinance we just talked about.
Before?
Yeah, you're
Well, you already have them
spreading
for-
yourself out too much. One subcommittee for this, one for that, one for that, one for that.
We have a subcommittee, at least one now, right, taking care of, working on,
Well, I know.
There's the Energy Commission, but I don't know, I don't know that we want to hand everything straight to them, but work with them. At least, they have a lot of data to help inform what the planning board or a subcommittee of the planning board could put together into a,
Tackled one at a time, get through one, then tackle another one, so we're only working on one at a
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Did-
And, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Be more manageable that way.
I think that's the way to do it.
I think-
I don't think you want a subcommittee, unless it's for the solar array, that would be one that would need,
Yeah.
possibly need a subcommittee, but the ADUs and other things, I don't think you need, is big enough to really need a subcommittee.
But there is a thought of warranting that the master plan needs to drive some of this.
Yes, there is.
And we have
The
a plan for
2004
that.
master plan can't do
And
that.
there's a master plan, and, yeah, where do you go with that? Does it go to the ADUs and the
That's in
solar
the
array?
question,
And
that's in the
Well-
question.
We had discussed getting through this process and then picking that back up. Would we have the January meeting, the second January meeting anyway, and pick this up early, or stick with the February timeframe?
I wasn't part of the previous conversation, so I
That-
have
it
no
was
idea
just,
what you're talking about.
Do we have something coming up at our next meeting, Naomi? Do we have things pending at our next meeting already?
No, your next meeting was gonna have your second public hearing, which you just cleared the slate, so.
We don't have any applications.
Yeah, we wouldn't have any, but they'd have to be submitted already.
Yeah, the application.
So I would suggest that we work hard at reviewing the questionnaire to go take it to the next level at our next meeting.
Can we,
That sounds like a great idea.
Let's look at that.
and I guess very specifically, because you've shared it with everybody, so the ask is, please read it in the next 2 weeks and come with any problems you find in it, and then we'll start hashing those out.
Good idea.
And not so much just problems, but if there's a question as to why we ask something a certain way,
Yeah.
it'd be helpful for us to be able to speak to that so you can understand our reasoning.
Or like instead of changing a may to shall and
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, because I don't remember, I'm sorry, you said you weren't there for some of it, so I don't remember what you heard or what you didn't. The request that we had made as a subcommittee was, we're gonna step back, hand it to the planning board, let the planning board decide if it was good or not, and then request to reform or reconstitute, the proper way, have that
Okay.
subcommittee again, to then pick up on the next phase, which would be get it sent out, probably in the tax bill. So actually create the survey, like on SurveyMonkey, whatnot, test it out, make sure it's good, QR codes, all that, ahead of, so the next goal, why I bring it up, the next goal is the tax bill deadline. That's what we were hoping, it wouldn't drag into
Right.
conflicting with that.
I hope we can make the next
June?
step.
We mail the tax bills out at the end of May,
You say you gotta be early June, maybe.
Memorial Day that we send them out.
You can keep mine.
And you don't-
Ignorance
Start piling
ignorance
up
of the
interest.
law does not.
Yeah, so that gives us time to,
Yeah, I have one thing. I read this over today. I think you gentlemen should look at number 44.
okay?
Let's talk to this at the next meeting. We had a football game that started an hour and a half ago, and I'm only winning
Well-
3-0.
You're up 10-0.
Just look
Okay,
at
we
it.
got-
Here's the problem, I think. Maybe
I got like 10 texts I gotta read.
we rank things 1 through 5.
Correct.
But we do it, in this case, we're doing it for two things. We're doing it for doing well. And there's
Oh,
a-
I see.
so how do you know what,
Yep. Can I
what
take a
the
picture
1
of
and what the
that?
5? Yeah.
Can I take a picture of that?
All right, what's next? My drugs are wearing off.
Oh,
Thanks, Chuck.
In other words, you'll
you
have
gotta
2
stay
1s,
ahead of
2
that
2s.
curve.
Good point.
Okay, let's go watch the football game.
Is that a motion?
No, you have to have a non-public discussion.
That's
We do. We also have a
Yes, we gotta make a non-public discussion. First, we have to have a break. We're gonna go to non-public. I gotta go downstairs.
Okay.
Are you adjourning the public portion?
Pardon me?
You're adjourning the public portion?
No, they're just gonna take a break. for
Just
a
take a
minute.
break, but then we're gonna go non-public. Bruce.
What was 44?
The only thing we could do is minutes and then.
Say goodbye.
All right, you too. Because nobody applies by Monday, so.
Sections, assessing the sections.
Gee, I said nobody applies by Monday at 5 o'clock, there's no notice yet.
Did you
Oh,
email
I
that
have
out?
it, I have it.
Kind of quiet,
To the
thank you.
town email? Or the regular email?
That's a good time.
I'll resend it.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Okay.
Chuck's perspective, top priority, or least priority, but what are we doing well? We rank the top 5 categories. So you have to do 2 things in that one position. So we have to divide that out to make it
So funny.
44 and then 45, and we know the rest of them.
It's a key.
While you're talking,
Okay.
I have one other suggestion.
Good night, guys. Did you guys read your minutes? We can get those out of the way too. You don't have to.
29. I'm wondering if you shouldn't take. Is that number 49? Down the bottom, 1, 2. Well, up 3 and 4, you might want to just make a separate, allow for commercial, or you want to read it over. You might want to make a separate
Question for commercial and non-commercial.
Well, possibly,
You'll have to take a picture of that too. Thank you.
Yeah, let's get going.
Pardon me?
2-minute warning before we
Yes, that's all. Second and one from the Notre Dame 39-yard line with a 2-minute warning. We're up 10-0. We've got 142 yards rushing. Quarterback's only 5 of 13 in passing attempts. So obviously our run game is doing all
What
right.
did you do while looking back at all the stats?
Yeah, multitasking. 10-0.
Who's ahead?
The good guys.
Penn
Which
State.
one's the good guy?
Penn State.
Penn State?
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Okay. I'm a big Ohio State man, so I don't really care.
Oh, yeah, you do. Go Big Ten. More money for the Big Ten.
They did all kinds of reorganization.
I'm surprised.
So Craig, I put in front of you the capital improvements.
Pardon me?
Tonight, I put in front of you guys the bylaws and capital improvements as well as the full.
Yes, I saw that.
He's like, great to have you
Be
on the
nice to
team.
get it finalized.
20 days left.
It will be halftime any minute, so. So we have to finalize the capital improvement program?
You guys have talked about it since October.
So, I guess the last we saw, we were supposed to see the edits before and have a chance to review them before approving them,
We
so,
can do it in 2 weeks from now.
yeah, I would request that, because this is the first that we've seen the final edits.
2 weeks with the final.
2 weeks.
You can do your minutes in 2 weeks too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm gonna, do I have to announce what the application is before we go non-public?
Yeah, it's C,
Not there yet.
91A,
91A C?
91A3, 3C. You have to have a motion, a second, and a roll call.
91A2.
You want to look at it? No. No.
No?
A3, Roman 2,
Oh, 91A3.
right? Roman number 2, small c. Reputation.
E.
A C and E, I bet,
91A3E.
and C though. You're talking about someone's reputation.
I guess so. Okay. So I want to go into non-public under 91A3, C, and E. And I just made a motion. If somebody would second it, please.
Do we have to say what it's about?
Nope. You've referenced your letters. But he needs a second.
We need a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Nope, roll
No?
call.
Oh, roll call. Okay. Salem?
I have no clue what this could be about. I'm gonna abstain.
Pastor Bill? You know what it's about.
Well, it's about Charlie.
Let me go next.
Yeah.
This will refresh your memory what it's about. I'm going to recuse myself because I prepared the site plan for these guys.
Oh. Okay, Salem?
Yes.
Pastor Bill? Chuck?
Yes.
Me, yes.
So four,
You can get out of here.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
401, right? All right, let me just,
401.
and then you're gonna adjourn after?
Pardon me?
You're gonna adjourn after?
Yes.
State that publicly, please.
Take what?
State it publicly, please.
Oh, okay. Yes, we will adjourn after this non-public.
Okay, good night.
So we turn off the mic, turn off the TV?
Hang on, let me finish.
I am. I need to appoint somebody too, don't I?